In this quick guide, we're going to demonstrate how to create a wall with your regular structures to block different types of units from passing through, as well as explain the hitboxes of different objects of terrain to join your wall onto, so you can fully seal off your base. In Stormgate, there are currently two categories that all ground units fall into. We have small units, and we have large units. For the Vanguard, this is quite simple, as all units that are made from a barracks count as a small unit, and all units made from a mech bay count as a large unit. For Infernals, all units constructed at Tier 1 count as a small unit, and all units constructed at Tier 2 count as large units. For the Celestials, all units constructed at Tier 1, as well as the Tier 3 Archangel while grounded, all count as small units, and all units constructed at Tier 2 count as large units, with the exception of the Cabal, which also counts as a small unit despite being Tier 2. It is also worth mentioning that despite worker units, such as Bobs and Imps, being smaller than most barracks and Tier 1 units, for the purposes of constructing a wall, they also count as small units, and cannot squeeze through any smaller gaps, despite their smaller size. If you're ever unsure what size a unit is during a game, one easy way to determine this is whether a unit can pass through the navigable trees or not, which are common on most maps. If it cannot, like the Hedgehog, you'll know it's considered a large unit for the purposes of walling off. Now, to a rational person, this might seem insane, as surely it cannot be possible for both a Weaver and a Hedgehog, or an Archangel and an Imp, to be considered the exact same size. However, for the purposes of walling off, these units are considered identical. The main reason for this, at least from a game designer's perspective, is that it's much easier to design pathfinding for units moving around the map when they are lumped into similar size categories compared to making every single unit unique. This is something the Stormgate devs have talked about as a conscious design choice during their past development interviews, and will probably help to make the game easier to play compared to StarCraft 1, where almost every unit and structure had a completely unique size attached to it, which made constructing a proper wall very unintuitive. When it comes to creating a wall to block these two different unit types, we need to understand not all structures are the same, and that some will let units through compared to others that will block them. If you don't want to worry about this, the easiest way to build a wall is in a completely straight line, either horizontally or vertically. Regardless of the structure you use when doing this method, as long as each of these buildings is joined up and touching the one next to it, it will block all units from passing through, including small units. If you want to allow small units to pass through your wall, either with just one hole to allow our units to leave and enter, or because you just want to stop large units from getting through, if you leave a gap of 1 square between each of the structures, this will allow small units to pass through while still blocking larger units. And leaving a gap of 2 squares will allow larger units to pass through as well. It is also possible to build a wall diagonally, but this can be more complicated to do correctly. To stop all units passing through a diagonal wall with either small structures such as habitats, which have 9 building squares in total on their blueprint, or medium structures like the barracks, which have 16 buildable squares on their blueprint, you'll need to make sure each section of the wall overlaps with each other with at least 1 square. If you just join these structures up via the corners, it will still block large units, but it will actually let small units through, despite looking like there are no gaps. To allow larger units through, you just need to leave a 1 square gap between the corners compared to 2 when building side by side. For specifically large structures such as command posts, shrines, and arc ships when they previously could land, these have even leakier corners compared to regular structures, which will allow even large units to pass through when joining them up by the corners with other small or medium-sized structures. To allow just small units through a starting structure, you need to overlap the corner by at least 1 square, and to stop all units from passing through, you need to overlap by 2 squares. Regardless of what wall you create, you will usually finish it off by joining it up with a piece of terrain on the map to completely seal off a base or expansion. When joining a wall onto the edge or bottom of a cliff or ramp, both of these pieces of terrain behave in the exact same way as small and medium-sized structures, where they have the same leaky corners that will let small units through unless you overlap by at least 1 square. However, if you're joining a wall onto a forest of trees, a luminite mine, or even a creep tower capture point, these are the only objects in the game that don't have leaky corners, and you can actually make a full wall off against small units by placing your small or medium structure corner to corner with one of these pieces of terrain. Regardless of whether you are joining up a structure to a group of trees by the corners or side by side, you will need to leave a 1 square gap between it and the trees for small units to pass through, and a 2 square gap for large units. And if you ever want to join up your starting structure with a group of trees, you will only need to overlap by 1 square to make a full wall off. The only object in the game that you can't make a full wall off with is a Therium deposit, as they have a set of unbuildable squares for all structures, surrounding where it spawns lumps of Therium, which is just big enough to allow small units through, regardless of how you place your structures in relation to it. If you're ever confused where and when you should be building a wall, if you're using a build order guide, they will often advise on the best times to do so, to help defend against certain attacks that your build might be weak against. But if you're ever losing to a certain build on the ladder, and you think adding a wall would help against it, I strongly recommend just giving it a go, as it won't cost you anything, as long as you're using structures you were planning to build anyway. If you have any questions about what we've covered in this video, feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer any questions. In my last video, we took a look how enriched Therium works, and how we can use it to increase the individual efficiency of your workers, but this can come at a price, as you'll have to accept a proportionally lower Therium income in total to benefit from this greater efficiency, which you can check out by clicking the box on screen or clicking the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to like and subscribe if you want to help a really small channel like mine, and I'll see you in the next one.